Chaos at Ibrox. Rangers have blown Victoria Pleasant to bits in Europe, but that's just the beginning. Gassama's exploding in Europe. Tavernier's shock benching shakes the squad. Kieran Dowell, frozen out completely. His Ibrox days might be numbered. Lyle Cameron sparks outrage with brutally honest comments about Dundee that have folk foaming at the mouth. Strap in, because this is not your usual news update. This is the kind of chaos only Rangers can deliver. You've just witnessed the birth of a new darling at Ibrox, and his name is Djeidi Gassama. Rangers swatted Victoria Pleasant aside with a commanding 3-0 win under the lights of Ibrox in the first leg of the Champions League third qualifying round. And while Russell Martin might have had the odd grumble about a passive spell late on, there's not a soul in G51 who'd call that anything other than a demolition. The Czech media are calling it a lesson. 3 goals and no reply, and frankly, it could have been 5 or 6. They're saying Pleasant were torn apart. They're saying Gassama made heads spin, and they're not wrong. The 21-year-old Frenchman signed for just over £2 million from Sheffield Wednesday absolutely terrorized their right-hand side. He bagged a brace and left Czech defenders looking like they'd just come off the teacups at the Barras. One of their journos even said Amar Memic's head was spinning, and if you saw that second goal, you'd agree. Now, while Czech outlets moaned about missing Pavel Sulk, let's not pretend his presence would have stopped that wave of blue shirts coming down like a storm on the Clyde. This was about Rangers asserting European dominance once again. Total shots, Pleasant actually had more, but you don't win matches on speculative efforts. Rangers had precision, poise, and pure pace. And let's talk about Gassama again. 4 goals in 3 Champions League matches. Not bad for someone Sheffield Wednesday practically gave away for peanuts. Their supporters are losing the plot, absolutely gutted, saying it stings the most. And to be fair, it should. You don't let a lad with 7 goals and 66 successful dribbles last season leave for £2.2 million unless your club's falling apart. This isn't just about one lad, though. Oliver Antman looks like a bit of class, and Russell Martin's building something that could finally deliver not just group stage football, but a statement. You can feel it in the air at Ibrox. There's a hunger. But here's the rub. If Gassama keeps this up, are Rangers already facing a fight to keep him beyond one season? Or worse yet, did we just develop a Champions League level star only to watch him get poached like Bassi? You probably rubbed your eyes twice when you saw the lineup, and you weren't the only one. Russell Martin dropped James Tavernier for a Champions League qualifier. Yes, really. And by full time at Ibrox, it looked less like madness and more like a message. 3-0 against Victoria Pleasant, 1 foot already in the next round. And Martin's boldest call yet, as Rangers manager, might just be the turning point in his early tenure. Tavernier, along with Nicholas Raskin, was benched, a captain with over 500 appearances, more than 100 goals, and just as many assists, sitting out a crucial European tie. And guess what? It worked. Lyle Cameron was brilliant. Antman continued to show flashes of top-level quality. The tempo was sharp, the performance was fluid, and suddenly you could hear the usual excuses from pundits evaporate like a pint in the Loudon before kickoff. Now, to be fair, the media's split. Jeff Stelling was gobsmacked live on TalkSport, couldn't believe Tavernier didn't start. Andy Townsend tried to soften it. Rotation, breather, you know the drill, but let's not sugarcoat it. Dropping your club captain in a match worth potentially £25 million in Champions League cash isn't rotation. That's a shot across the bow, and it gets deeper. Andy Halliday, never one to mince his words, reckons Max Aarons, who's been shoehorned into left-back so far, is really there to challenge Tav directly on the right. Even said the Aarons left-back experiment should be binned immediately, and let's be honest, he's got a point. Aarons is clearly uncomfortable on the left. You don't bring in a Premier League quality right back just to make up the numbers. Now the heat's on Tav. Yes, he scored against Motherwell, but his defensive switch-off cost us 2 points. And that's been the story too often, hasn't it? Electric going forward, suspect at the back. And in a team that's crying out for discipline and structure, Russell Martin seems ready to make changes, no matter how unpopular. You could almost sense the atmosphere shifting. It's no longer about loyalty, it's about performance. And if you're not pulling your weight in both boxes, your name, no matter how big, is going to be on the bench. Is it finally time for James Tavernier to be stripped of the captaincy and eased out of the starting 11 for the good of Rangers? While all eyes were on the flair and firepower up front, one player was left firmly out in the cold: Kieran Dowell. Not only was the 27-year-old dropped from the starting 11, but unlike Raskin and Connor Barron, he never even got a sniff off the bench. That tells you everything you need to know. When you're in a European tie with full control and the manager still doesn't call your name, it's not just form, it's trust. And Dowell's losing it fast. Joe Rothwell, Diamond, and Lyle Cameron bossed the midfield. The tempo was right, the balance was bang on, and there was finally a sense of control we've been crying out for in the middle of the park. It wasn't flashy, it was functional, and Dowell's been on the wrong side of that dynamic for too long now. The truth? If a half-decent offer lands on the table, he's as good as gone. But let's not get too bogged down in the exit door, because at the other end of the spectrum, there's nothing but excitement. Djeidi Gassama and Oliver Antman look like they've been playing together for years. The chemistry's there, the understanding, the movement. Gassama's brace will take the headlines, and fair play, but Antman was just as electric. It was the kind of debut that makes the crowd sit up and take notice. Credit where it's due. Kevin Thelwell's pulled a rabbit out the hat with Gassama, a winger from Sheffield Wednesday. Who knew he'd become a European weapon this quickly? But it's not just pace and goals, it's attitude, confidence. You can see it in the way he celebrates. He knows he belongs here. And as for Antman, 1 assist, countless problems caused down that right side, and the fans already singing his name before he even hit the showers. That's how you announce yourself at Ibrox. So while all the chat after Motherwell was about frustration, fatigue, and fragility, just a few days later, the tones completely flipped. This looks like a side ready to push for the Champions League, and finally, the depth is starting to show. But with that, a brutal question has to be asked. If Kieran Dowell isn't even trusted to come off the bench in a European tie, already won, has he ever truly been good enough to wear the Rangers shirt in the first place? Now, you knew it wouldn't take long for someone to get their knickers in a twist, and right on cue, here comes Tam McManus, clutching his pearls over a lad daring to tell the truth. Lyle Cameron, fresh from bossing the midfield in Rangers 3-0 dismantling of Victoria Plusden, is under fire, not for how he played, but for having the audacity to say what every footballer already knows: life at Ibrox is different gravy. Speaking to BBC Scotland, Cameron described the leap from Dundee to Rangers as a different world. He spoke about the pace, the intensity, the demands, and called it what it is, being a proper full-time footballer. Now, apparently that's disrespectful. According to McManus, it's an insult to his old club. Give me peace. Let's get one thing straight. What Cameron said isn't arrogance, it's honesty. You don't go from playing in front of 5,000 folk at Dens to walking out under the lights at Ibrox in the Champions League and pretend it's the same job. It's not, and if he said otherwise, he'd be called a liar. He's not taking shots at Dundee, he's just explaining the standards he's now held to. The expectations, the pressure, the fact that at Rangers, every mistake is magnified, every touch scrutinized, and every performance judged against silverware, not survival. And while folk online are crying about media training, the manager's having none of it. Russell Martin praised him to the heavens, highlighted his energy, his selflessness, his desire to learn. That's what matters. Not a couple of social media warriors looking for a reason to be offended. Let's be real, Cameron's gone from being a good player at a small club to a vital cog in a team chasing Champions League football. If he's talking like he belongs here, good. That's exactly the mentality you want in the dressing room. But let's stir it a wee bit, shall we? If a player can't speak honestly about the gulf in class between Dundee and Rangers, does that tell you more about Lyle Cameron or about the fragile wee bubble that some folk in Scottish football still live in? If you haven't seen yesterday's video yet, you're missing out. Explosive news about Rangers that'll leave every fan stunned. Go check it out now.